What is up, guys? It's Doo Poker here, back for another video. Today we are going to be delving into part 2 of the GTO Preflop ranges versus MDA Preflop ranges. We'll be looking at cutoff versus big blind 3-bet, and we'll be looking at MDA for this spot. We want to find the discrepancies between the frequencies and the range composition. So first, let's look at GTO Wizard. In a very common spot, we're in the cutoff and we RFI, and our opponent is in the big blind in 3 bets. Now we see here that a big blind 3-bet is around 9.3%, and they're using huge sizing. People are not going this big in game. They are not going 13.5 big blinds. They mostly go around 11 or 12. But let's look at MDA Preflop for this spot. We're going to pull up MDA Preflop for this spot, and we see that the percentage is only 7%. Now, we compare that to 9.3%, and we see there is a big discrepancy. We also see discrepancies in the range composition. So what do I mean? I mean, if you look at the percentages, you see that a hand like 6-5 suited is 3-betting 51% of the time, and a hand like 9-8 suited is only 3-betting less than 25%. But people do not do this. We can see from the range composition that people are going very linear. Let me zoom in on this and show you guys. So what we see here is we see a hand like 6-5 suited shows up 745 times, but a hand like 9-8 suited shows up over 1,000 times. And you see that this is very linear. The weaker the suited connector, the less it's 3-bet. This is not what GTO does, but this is what humans do, because humans 3-bet linearly for value. It's more intuitive to do that instead of to use blockers like a computer would do. So the only time we don't see this is in the Ace-X suited hands. We see that Ace-5 suited is going to be 3-bet more than a hand like Ace-6, Ace-7, Ace-8, Ace-9, because population has intuited that Ace-5 suited is the premier Ace-X suited 3-bet hand. They realize that Ace-5 suited should be 3-bet more than any other Ace-X suited until we get to the Broadway Ace-X suiteds. So two huge discrepancies here. The frequency is much lower, 7% versus 9 to 10% depending on sizing, and the range composition is much different. GTO will base its frequencies based on blockers and the cutoff response to the big blind 3-bet, but people do not do this. They go linear for value. We can see this because if you look at 5-4 suited, it's the least 3-bet suited connector, and then a hand like 10-9 suited is 3-betting, more than 2x times the 5-4 suited. This is assuming equal card distribution, but you guys get the idea. So let's go to notes. Let's go to notes for a second. So we know that a GTO percentage for a big blind 3-bet is around 9 to 10%, and we see in MDA it's around 7%. We see that the frequency goes linearly from lowest to highest, and GTO does not do this. The only time this pattern doesn't occur is in the Ace-X suited hands, because population realizes that Ace-5 suited is a better 3-bet than Ace-6, Ace-7, Ace-8, and Ace-9. So what I did was I took a GTO Wizard Elite Preflop sim. I node locked what I think to be a more realistic range, and we want to find the cutoff's response to this range. First, let's look at the big blind 3-bet sim. What we do here is we go to our sim, and I node lock to 12 BB sizing. In the original, it goes 13.5, but people don't usually go that big, so I think 12 is more realistic. I also chose ACR 200 NL rake. You can choose whatever rake sizing you like. In the first part 1 of this series, I chose GG rake, which is super high. ACR is more reasonable. So here I node locked to 7%, and I chose a linear big blind 3-bet range. Now what I'm going to show you is the cutoff response to this big blind 3-bet. Not only is it a lower percentage, 9% to 7%, it's also a different range composition. So what we'll see here, in the cutoff versus big blind 3-bet, we should never be having a calling range. The range from the big blind is too strong. You want to either 4-bet or fold based on blockers. Because we know it's linear, You want to be playing a 4-bet or fold strategy and not calling. You have to take all the factors into account. You have to take the rake into account. You have to take in the composition into account and the frequency. This may surprise some people, but the big blind has the biggest discrepancies in 3-bet frequencies versus GTO. So we take all these into account and we realize you only want to play 4-bet or fold. Okay, let's go over and we'll do a recap of this part 2 of this series. First thing you want to know is, what is the rake structure in your game? Remember, GG Poker, very high rake, while a site like Coin Poker has very low rake. You need to know the rake structure in your game so that you can know how to play preflop. You also want to know, does GTO align with MDA for preflop? Remember, big blind 3-bets have the biggest discrepancy, not only in frequency, but in range composition versus GTO. You want to know how big is that discrepancy. In this spot, it's 7% versus 9 to 10%. We know the range composition is not the same. They are going more linear, except in the ace-5 suited versus the ace-6, ace-7, ace-8, and ace-9. We see also here that a hand like 5-4 suited is going to be 3-bet less in reality than all the higher suited connectors because they go linearly. So what we do is we realized what the actual MDA preflop range is. We put it into a solver. I put 7% here, and we realized that we never call in the cutoff versus a big blind 3-bet. We should just be playing a 4-bet or fold strategy. Now, this is going to go against most modern preflop ranges, but this is what happens when you take MDA seriously and you realize that people are not playing like GTO. All right, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed that. If you like this type of content, please give me a like. Please give me a subscribe. New video every single day, 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And I will see you guys in the next video. Take care.